Hi guys, welcome. This is Liesel from Artist Palette, and we are doing this lovely painting here today, The Perfect Spot. So I have my primary colors, black and white as usual. That's bright yellow and or primary yellow, bright red or primary red, and phthalo blue and black and white. So I also have some brushes on the side that we're going to be using. And you can use any large brush. I'm using a really small canvas, so these are really large, but you can use a flat one, you can use a round one. And I have a flat medium. You can use, this is a little bit different than what I normally use, but it still can do kind of the same thing. You can use a bright or just a longer flat one. And this is it says it's a number 6 or number 4 is good. And then maybe if you want, you can use a medium round brush, something like this, to get the details for the leaves later. Maybe some texture on the moon up here. And then maybe more of a actual detailed brush, number 2 or something smaller than that. A 00 or 0 for a small painting is really good. Okay, so you can pause, take your time throughout this video, and we can get started. Let's just start with the flat one. So we want to start with dipping that in the water. And we're going to mark off our little horizon line. We're going to start with some like orangey colors. You can use a mixing palette if you want to. So grab a scoop of yellow. And then a little dot of red. See that little dot here? And we get more of an orange. So you can use a deep orange, or you can add a little tiny corner dot of some white in just to brighten it up a smidge. And there's various oranges you can use. So you don't have to go exactly like how I did with mine. And I went below halfway, so I'm just going to do a straight line going across like this. Yeah, lined it up, and I'm like, okay, it's roughly around here. I just went like that. And then I'm going to start, we're going to ignore where the sun is kind of setting there. We're just going to do slight little curves on the ends going upwards. I'm still using the thin side. See? And then, so just go up a little bit. You can go up a little bit more, but I'm going to stop right away because I want more of a darker orange down here. And that's going to get a little bit lighter into the teal, because orange and teal, they can make brown pretty quickly. So immediately I can just take more white and a touch more yellow. So it's going to go more on the yellowy side. I just took a little scoop of each, mix that separately. See how much more yellow, bright yellow that is? Even though it's got orange, it's still like a yellowy orange, but very soft, not too bright with the yellow. Okay, so now I'm just going to go above, just go and fill in this area. Do the thin side, just fill in the gaps. A little touch of water is probably helpful if you're finding it's a bit too dry and it's not mixing very well. And just a little bit up here, but I'm going to wash this off. So you can see I'm getting a little bit higher, and it's just dipping, it's doing the curved line still. Just going to wash this off. Once you feel like you have enough, just dab it a bit dry and take basically white. This is going to help blend it and brighten it. Just white. You can use the same large brush. I'm going to blend this out. So I'm going to start above, go a little bit higher, and then drag it down lower into all of this bright yellow. So this is going to give a nice transition from really light into the teal, so it's not going to make too much of a green-brown color. And you can always add more of this after you do your teal if you want to streak in a little bit more, so we'll do that afterwards. Yeah, and wash that off. And we'll start putting a teal base, mostly up here and down here into the water. So that means we're going to take some blue. We're going to take a nice scoop of blue. Just remember, pause this video whenever you need to. So that's actually a lot of blue, but we'll stick with that because you never know how much you actually need. And see that little dot of yellow? Mix it with just a little bit at a time. It's going to be really dark, but when you add in a small pea size of white, there, now you can see it's very teal. And it's whatever teal you like. So if you like more of a greenish, on the greener side, kind of minty green, you can just add a touch more yellow. Just before it's starting to turn green, you can stop, or if you like it slightly more greenish, totally up to you. So I'm going to go a little bit lighter, just adding a bit more white. And of course, the more blue you put back into it, the more blue it's going to get again. So I'm going to take a big scoop of my white. I'm just going to mix it in a small little section so that I don't have to mix it with all of it to make it lighter. I could just get a small section of light teal and then keep some darker teal for later. Dot more of my yellow. Just little dots of it until you're happy. Right? Because it turns green pretty quickly if you just overshoot that yellow. Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty good to start. We can always lighten it. So let's start higher up. Okay, don't start down here. You might regret that. We're going to start with, we're going to keep it going with the curved motions. I do have some more blue on here, so if you're finding it's going back to blue, it's a good idea to wash it off and just make sure there's no blue, dark blue sitting in there to cause it to go back to that color. I'm just going to go right to the top. We can always darken, grab some more, and if you have to mix a little bit more, that's okay. We don't need exact colors. It's actually nice when it's got a little bit of some difference in color. See? Back to that. Touch of water is always good. Fill it in and just keep it going. Just imagine you're making and continuing that soft curved lines instead of straight across. And then, now I'm going to take a little scoop of white. So hopefully there's not too much teal left on your brush. Okay, and I'm going to take white. Now we're going to help blend this into our yellow. So I'm just going to go across and switch brushes. So I just went along that bottom part. I'm going to switch brushes into, maybe I'll use more of this flat one. That one seems fine. Touch of water. And I don't mind taking any of my contaminated white now. It has a touch of that teal or blue in there. Cool, yeah, that seems good. Or just add more white to a small section here. And here we go. We're just going to lightly streak. Touch of water. More of that contaminated white. And just curl it up. I don't mind some of the streaky look. If it's still taking a lot of your teal, it's too dark, like you're going, oh, this is too much blue, it's still picking up a lot, just wash off this brush, take clean white, don't take anything else, and just go along the bottoms to lighten them up into that yellow, and it should soften it really well. Just white. You can use the thin and the flat side if you're using a smaller brush, but do what you're comfortable with. If you like the thin side for more of a streaky look, stick with it. I'm using the flat and thin side because it's still quite small with the strokes. Thin side a little bit. And you can bring this down as much as you want to. You can break up some of this orangey yellow if you want a little hint of this slight hint of teal seeping into your yellow golden sunset. Okay, and after that You can use this brush still. Just wash it off, and we're going to go and make it a little bit darker at the top and put some teal along the bottom here. So let's do this at the bottom first, and then we'll come back and darken at the top. I'm going to go back to my larger brush. It was pretty good. I got it filled in pretty quickly. So a bit more of my blue and touch of yellow again. And you can go more of a sea kind of color, you know, touch more yellow than you put up at the sky if you want to. So something like this is good. I'm going to start from the bottom. Touch of water, take more. Back and forth. I'm just using the flat side. Fill in all of this, because the darker, deeper color I want to put at the bottom. So you can, depending on how dark you want to go, you can keep it kind of in the same range. I just kind of picked up from where I was up here, so it's not too far off in color, but you can go deeper if you just take blue and a touch of yellow without any white. See how much more darker that is? And I'll just show you really quickly. I'm just going to use the thin side because I didn't go this dark, but I just streaked in a little bit of that. You can do that. So some ideas. So going back to this is your painting. You should be happy with the colors that you pick. There are variations. Now I'm getting close to the top. Okay, so I'm getting close to that horizon line here. So I'm just going to do that, my little sneaky trick. I'm going to take just white from here, dirty white, because I know it's only been touching yellow and blue, which is still within my color range. And I'm just going to do a line right below. So it's the lighter version of everything I've been doing. Bring it down, so it's only going down a little bit. See, just a little bit of a lighter version up top. And you can very lightly blend it out. Just go back and forth. I'm in between the dark and light color until it's more blended. And that's your base coat for now. So while that's drying for a minute, you can switch back to the top. You can make it a little bit deeper up here, the more deeper teal, so it's like it's in the darker area for where the moon is, and it gets lighter for the sunset. Blue, touch of yellow, and I'm not really trying to match it too much. I just have a general idea of how I want my teal to look. Just do that. See, it's darker. I just added more blue and yellow, and I didn't add any more white. Right into the same area. Touch of water. You can add a touch of white if it's really dark. Just go and continue from the corner, the top corner. Always start from the furthest point and the darkest point, not down here, because then you have a lot of blending out to do. So we go back to that sort of color. See, it was quite dark. That's okay. And to blend it back out again, just keep doing that trick that I was showing you. Once you used up a lot of your paint with this, you know, trying to get it a little bit deeper in color, drag it down a bit, and you can use a bit more white on your brush to blend it back out, or add a bit more white into this color to get it a bit brighter. Okay. And at any point, your smaller flat brush with a bit more of your contaminated white, that contaminated stuff, because I don't like things perfectly white, but it generally just makes it a little bit more lighter to blend it out. can play around with this quite a bit. It's hard to stop, really. Whatever you feel like doing. You can even bring in more teal. So if I just mix a little bit more of my teal, you can bring a little more down to the bottom, streak it in. That's if it's like a lot of white in here, but I'm just playing around at this point, showing you ideas, but white is the trick. When in doubt, if it's too dark, just take some white on your brush. You don't need to wash it off, it just makes it a lighter version. Okay, just a little bit of some white. I can soften these darker spots up, blend it out with my smaller brush. And just use a touch of water so it's not too dry for blending. And with this very light version, you can break up some of your orange down here. Use the thin side and put some of that in. Haven't washed off the brush. I'm gonna swoop it in, break it up a bit. So there we go. Break up some of that yellow. Looks like it comes even lower instead of, I guess, randomly stopping. So you're using the thin side, your very light version of your teal, so mostly white, just like a dot of your leftover teal on your brush type of thing. Putting that in. Wash this off. So alternatively, like I said, you can put in some bright yellow, but when it's still wet, it'll just turn right to green. So we're going to go back down here into the water. And now we can put in some highlights, just make it look a bit more like water. You can go slightly closer. There we go. So in terms of brushes, maybe a smaller, more medium flat brush of your choice. I like to start with some darker teal first and then brighten it up. So no white, so blue, a couple little dabs of yellow. See how dark it is? Yeah, it almost looks like it's kind of black, but I do touch it up with a little touch of white so that I can still see the color. Okay, flatten that. Just flatten on each side. Keep it nice and thin on the tip of it. And just go like this. Short little lines. And you can, if you like it more uneven water, you can do slight little, not so, like I'm just kind of blobbing and letting some of the paint sit a little bit thicker to make it look more like waves. So again, instead of straight lines, I'm just going to press and then just do a little bit of a very soft waved line, but not too wavy. It's supposed to be more relaxed unless you're trying to go for a really, angry sea type of thing. For the most part, some thin little lines up here because it's far away. Let's just keep it far away looking so it's not as big. And then down here, you can be more generous. You can take more of your paint color and do much longer lines. Need some more water. Let's mix a little bit more of our paint with that touch of white. Yeah, I just did a lot of these. And some water. There we go. So it looks like we got some waves going on. Awesome, good. A couple up here. Wash this off. And there's lots of things you can add into it if you just want to add in some plain old light blue into this mix. So that's just a little bit of blue and some white at any, whatever light or darkness you prefer. See if you like it. Don't add it for the sake of adding it. If you like that pop of color or some very light baby blue, some more white. You can couple that with some of your teal. I don't really try to cover the teal or go around the teal. I just happen to put it where it happens to go. But I do place it around the general area where the darker teal was. So yeah, that's kind of nice. Just some highlights of the blue. Wash it off. And one thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to the sky, add in a little bit more of our bright yellow, and then put in our stars and moon, and we can focus on putting in our sun and the rest of the water. So that's just going to dry first, and make sure that this is in when it's dry. So a touch of yellow and some white. So a bit more white than yellow because you get a softer yellow. And if you want to add the tiniest dot of red, you can. So just to soften it up. Depends on what you're going for, right? So if you like to go back to sort of look what happens when you take too much red. White, touch more yellow, and a bit more white to dilute all of that red, but it still gives you that almost like a creamy, soft, golden yellowy look without it being so yellow. So you can just put this in using the smaller flat brush. Use the thin side and just kind of break up. Maybe I'll put a little bit up here. Just break up some of this teal. Don't go too high, but this is the highest part because I wanted it to be a little bit more unbalanced. Okay. Leave some gaps sometimes. Just put some in. Maybe a bit more white into the middle with the yellow, so it's more of a really bright yellow in the middle where the sun is going to sit. Yeah, a little bit here. So yeah, just if you're trying to put it a little bit higher, just take a little bit of paint, just very lightly. Put it in. See, I'm going over it a few times because there's hardly any paint on my brush, so that's why it's kind of working out. There we go. And you can always touch up on your actual golden color down here one last time if you want to do a second coat. Or if you want to add more of this darker orange anywhere, just doing a bit of kind of like a second coat, or maybe more yellow, depending on how deep you want it to look, just at the bottom. So in here I went a little bit deeper, which, you know, it's preference, right? You don't have to do it exactly like mine. That's how I happen to make it. Just really quickly, you can skip over this, but if you take more, washing this off, if you take more of a pink color, so white with a dot of red, and you want to put some more of a pink color in instead, that's an option. It's not going to do anything, I don't think it's going to do anything weird. I think it's kind of nice. You can put that kind of alternatively to some of the yellow up here to give it a soft blend out. More of a pinkish tone throughout. Just put a little bit. Very soft pink. Try not to go too dark. I'm just going to put that around some of my yellowy spots. And there we go. You can see a little bit of a difference in the whole color scheme. Very subtle. Okay, so wash that off. Wait for it to dry. I have a feeling this is dry, but when you're ready, we're going to go up into our sky. Back in there. Put in some stars and the moon. And that would be our detail brush, or any really small kind of round brush that you'd rather use. The detailed or a small round. You can use a more of a small round for the moon first. I do suggest taking something tiny and tracing around like a circle like this to put in the moon, just because it's easier to work with. Okay. So washing off brushes. Then I am going to use this. I'm not going to go all the way up here, right? Because we have to consider that we have like some sort of heart-shaped little canopy thing, you know, some sort of foliage, vines, anything you want to call it. And I'm going to bring it down a little bit. You can bring it down really as much as you want to. So I know that I'm going to do something like this. So I'm going to bring it just a little bit lower. This seems like a good spot. And I'm going to start with my white, of course. And it's upside down. So I went like a C shape, but upside down. I went a little bit lower here than I went in painting that I originally made. So totally fine. There. And I went a little bit more to the side, I guess, but that's still okay. Just not to the very, very edge. So with some white, all you're going to do is, maybe with your detailed brush you want to do this, just make sure that you're happy with the very ends. They're almost, you're just very lightly, with hardly any white paint, just get a couple little dabs into the center of this, kind of blob a little bit, then get thinner on the ends here, thinner on the ends, thinner on the ends, and you can use your finger to lightly smooth it out type of thing. Very lightly touch. Hardly any paint, otherwise you get this big blob of white paint. I'm going to go, just making sure I'm going right to the edges. So we don't want gaps along the edges, we just want it to fade outwards, not to fade at the edge. And if you have very little paint, very lightly, just follow, just lightly brush so you can barely see it. If you want it to continue a little bit more, very optional. Okay. So as a bit of a second coat, this is optional too, you can deepen up your white with maybe a detailed brush just along the very edge here. Okay, just along the very edge. And you can deepen that up. Don't deepen up the center anymore. You want to keep those faded. And there's another way to give it a bit more of a faded look. Just wait a minute. However, you can start dotting some stars. So you can take the back handle of one of your detailed brushes and lightly kind of poke around. Maybe make a constellation in the sky. And they're not evenly spaced either. There. So we got some stars. You can always add more later too. All right. So to give it a bit more of a softer look for the moon, it's about going back to, with your detail brush, going back to a similar teal color. If you have any left over, then that should be pretty easy to do. Just kind of going back to a similar darker teal color that you put up there. Remember, there was a little bit of white in there. A little bit of white, it wasn't too dark. All right. So you can clean up any edges, first of all. You can do that. You can put a little edge around your moon. And take a touch more white here with it. You can just very lightly tap around, lightly brush so that you're breaking up some of the white and give it a softer look. You're not completely covering it, you're just more of a transparent look. So that just means you're barely brushing the paint on. You can use your finger again. So it's transparent, so there's a little bit of brightness in there. It just gives it more of a faded look. That's what it is. Alrighty. So I'm going to not play around with that too much because I know it can start changing quite drastically. And I just wash this off. Let's go back, put in our sun, and start putting in some details in the water and work on all of that nice heart-shaped vines going around. So I've just put white for the sun. Pretty much in the middle, if you want to center that. I'm going to go and make a dome shape with my detailed brush. Very soft one. Not too big, just along the horizon, lining up with that line that we had. There we go. And if you want to make it more faded looking, wipe off on the extra paint. I just wiped it off. And you can just lightly brush above to blur that line so you don't see where that line is anymore. It's just more of a glow. Okay, now you can barely see where it really is crisp and where it starts and ends. It's not too precise. So I go back to my medium flat. And with this medium flat, we can start adding in some highlights down here. You can put in some, if you put pink up here, I think it's nice with some pink oranges to reflect down here. And I think that would be good enough. So let's take some white here, since it's dry. And all I'm going to do is just along the horizon, just do short little lines. And I am a bit more careful. I don't want to cover all my dark shadow teal that I just put in, unless you think it's a bit much. I'm just going to put a lot of in between some of my darker colors, but more into, so that that teal is still showing. And I did that along the horizon. And then I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to start following it more, getting more narrow. So I'm just going to start getting a bit more narrow here. As you get down, you can be a bit more generous with your paint because it's getting closer to you. And it's still broken up because I'm not doing it perfectly. Get a little bit longer with the streaks. A bit more of this. Ooh, that's not a perfect triangle shape. It's just, it has a lot more movement. That's why it's reflecting kind of all over the place. But I can concentrate them more into the centers where the sun is kind of glowing. And also the moon we have to account for, so that's why there's some additional light. But anyways, there we have a lot of some highlights broken up still, coming down mostly the middle. And you can always touch up on a bit more, just short little lines, kind of lightly tap really close to the top of the horizon too, to give it that brightness, because that's where the brightness really is, concentrating. So that's, you can leave it just like that. That's one way to do it. Don't really need to wash it off, although if it helps you can. You can take light pink, remember dot of red, some white, orange, yellow. I'm going to start with the pink because I did put a little bit of pink up here, if you remember, or if you added it in. It's just nice to add too. A little bit of pink. Anyway. I just liked how this looked. I'm going to put some of that into here. And go maybe a little bit more deeper with the pink if it's not showing very well. And you can put that in new spots on top of some of your white. It will just make it lighter, of course. And I mostly kept it up here. I didn't really follow it all the way down. I'm going to add in a little bit of yellow to give it more of a yellowy color. Yellowy orange. It's like a creamy peach. That seems nice. You can even add this into your sky too if you really like it. Make sure it's really bright because really dark colors, it's just going to overpower your sky. Okay. And maybe a little bit of bright yellow. So just a little bit of yellow and that scoop of white. You could just do that instead of any pink or cream color. Mostly up here, coming down the middle a little bit. Yeah, lots of color. Okay, there, I'm going to leave that. You can always add in more brightness if you want it to be a bit more lighter or white going through, or lighter teal. Yeah, I'm going to leave that. I'm good with it. I'm going to put a bit more white into this very soft, glowing sun. And whenever you're ready, we are going to start with making the shape here for all of those branches and the leaves that are coming out. Okay, so in terms of brushes, you can use whatever makes you comfortable. I would say maybe start with we can use this medium flat brush and then we can switch to a detailed brush. So I am starting with black. Starting with the black. Some water and black. I like to use the corner. Maybe you want to use a detailed brush after all, who knows. I like to use the corner of my brush and sometimes the thin side. I don't really like to use the flat side for a little while. But you can see we can just start with like the middle and just very conservatively for now start bringing this around. To mimic the shape of the heart, so it dips down a little bit into here. You can use some little soft little curves, interlocking in and out. Okay, so you can see sort of what's happening so far. So it's off to the side, basically touching the side. And again, use your detailed brush if it's better. Just use, I like to use the corner. I don't mind hitting it right here on the side. Right there. And when you know that you want to fill in mostly the side, you can just do almost like you're making some leaves in a way, commas, to fill it in. And I want to make sure that I'm touching the edges. I'm not leaving gaps. So I want to imagine this is going beyond the canvas. I like to do lots of interlocking and overlap because it's more random this way. Mostly the little leaves or the vines that are coming out, they're not just all hanging down. Touch more water, more black. They're kind of, yeah, they're just folding up a little bit, following the groove. So they'll probably just go this way. They'll come out and just wrap back into here. Or maybe some of them will stick out sometimes, but not always. Just a little bit of a bend. Start filling this in a little bit. So there's still some gaps, not completely filled in. Making sure the edges are a bit more filled though. Some coming out sometimes. And then just, see, it's curving with the groove, so it's coming down a little bit, little squiggly lines. And then down here, yeah, it's going to eventually have to start mimicking more of the heart shape. Unless you have other plants. It is eventually going to just cut it right off. It's like in line with this bright V shape that we have from the highlights of in the ocean from the sun. So just do a little bit at a time. Just do some squiggly lines, a little bit lower than maybe you intend. The corners do have to get a little bit more filled in. Just kind of dab, use some comma shapes, some gaps, some peekaboos that you can still see some of the water a little. All right. Just bringing a bit more together. So this is going to come in a little bit more now. And you can see I didn't, at the bottom, I didn't just stop at the bottom. I did bring it up a little bit so that there is a bit of a barrier down here. Okay, just going to slowly fill it in a little bit by a little bit, bottoms and the edges. Very edges, I like to really get that kind of darkened and filled. And just remember, feel free to go to your detailed brush whenever you're trying to do little squigglies, just hanging out on the edges here. Okay, so I'm going to switch to more of a smaller brush now that I have some sort of base. So I wash this off. I can fine tune it a little bit more. Water and black, and just very lightly with the tip. So maybe I'll just put in some soft little lines. Maybe just some curling in and out. Maybe sometimes coming out a little bit. Just it builds onto it very subtly and not too extreme. Just putting this down. Maybe some little twigs here, little dabs. A little bit on this side too. Yeah, it's all just flowing down more, not too sticking straight out like spikes or prickly things. Just kind of soft little waves or twigs, as you can imagine. Okay. There, just a little bit more definition. Maybe a little bit more right here on the side. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to go into, I'm going to use my medium, smaller round kind of brush. I'm going to take a dark green. So that's about equal parts blue and yellow. You can mix that anywhere. See, it's like a forest dark green. And then I'm going to take a dot, just a small little dot of black. And a small little dot of white. Gives it a grayish, sort of olive green in a way. Kind of dark, but still got that green tinge. You can add another little dot of black if you like it more muted in tone. And for me, I like to just lightly tap and get in some shrubbery on top of this black. Because right now it's really dark. We just need to start adding in some foliage. I'm not going outside just yet. I want to leave that for the highlights. So I'm just going into these areas. I'm just dabbing it kind of randomly and blobbing it. I'm going to mix a little bit more. Maybe that little dot of black or two. And just a smidge of white. Just more on the outsides. Okay, so just along the edges here. So, not too much of a difference, but we're getting there. Let's add a little scoop of white here. And let's add in another scoop of yellow. Okay, now we got a bit more of an obvious green, but it's more softer. It's not like the super vibrant green. Take a touch of water and maybe wipe off a little extra paint, but lightly tap, lightly dab. So if it's too much paint, you'll notice that it's too blobby, but when I tap with more of the tip or the side, I can get a more softer look. You can see a little bit more brightness. And just a little bit closer to the edge now, starting to seep over the edges, only here and there, not a whole ton. But you can see just along the edges, just you could go along some of the edge of your darker green and getting close to the very outside edge of this black, like little taps. And now we are going to take our vibrant highlighted green. So you can wash it off and just take yellow, just a little touch of blue actually, because we don't need too much to make green. And just a little, see that much white, just a little pea size. Mix that, twirl it. And all I'm doing is just pressing and kind of flicking, press so that the more thicker side is kind of sticking outwards and making more of a leafy look. And it can be a little bit into the black too. It doesn't have to be all along the outsides. There's such thing as layering. And a little bit here. So you can always add more white if you want more bright. So a couple leaves in one spot. You can do a couple in one spot, move on, do a couple again. It's nice when you're not just doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 type of thing. You're doing maybe 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Maybe leave a gap sometimes. And maybe a little bit down here. It's always good to hide anything that you don't like as well. So if there's a black spot that you're like, oh no, just put some leaves there. Put some leaves and you're good. Maybe a slight couple little dabs into the center, tiny bit of in the middle of some of your black to fade it out. But yeah, there we go, nice and leafy. You can always add a bit more yellow and white if you want more brightness on some of your leaves to stand out more than others. That's always a thing. Okay, I think that's good enough for leaves before I kind of overdo it. Extra jabs just around where the moon is kind of glowing. It's kind of nice, but yeah. Feel free to go back to some darker green if you need to tone things down. And then add more stars if you want to. But that should be pretty much the last step. You have this awesome little scenery. I'm going to add in another little star. Put some like in between some of the branches to make it look like you can see through it, but that's, yeah, that's just preference, I guess. Okay, so thanks for painting along with me. Hopefully this was not too bad, kind of fun, relaxing, and it's nice to see that results always vary and different colors can come, and maybe you're feeling like going in a slightly different direction. But you can show your results on our Facebook page at Artist Palette Durham Region on Facebook, and you can go into our groups and just look at the support group we have for acrylic paintings. And yes, we offer lots more stuff, drawings, watercolor, and maybe sometimes what we call workshops of different types of things. But artistpalettedurham.com has our upcoming events free and on Zoom. If you are interested in supporting us sometimes, you can do that. We have lots going on, so maybe you'll paint along with me again sometime. You can check us out on our YouTube as well and see what's coming up too. Thank you guys. Bye.